and talk about what this anthrax is. I think most of us in the news, you hear that, no, the city council have closed a shop or a butcher because of ABCD. A lot of things are being talked about. So instead of leaving me and you amiss, we thought we can dwell on what this anthrax is and also just understand the times that we are living in. So the people that will lead us through this talk is our panel, who when they come, they will introduce themselves. For now, before they come through, there is a testimony that is supposed to be shared, and then I invite the person who is supposed to do the testimony to just come through. They're not yet here. Okay. So, chorister, do we have a special song? They're not yet here. Okay. Since no one is here, let's sing a special song as the audience. Twali twaifwe kulikabumba vombe milimo iyaposana. Twali twaifwe kulikabumba vombe milimo iyaposana. Ifwe bonse milimo, oh milimo, seni tubombe milimo, yes watwishila, fwe bonse milimo, oh milimo, seni tubombe milimo, yes watwishila.
Thank you, Elder Kombwa. Good afternoon, church. Well, we can do better. Good afternoon. Thank you. So, you're welcome to today's discussion on anthrax. On our what? On anthrax. We have a discussion that we want to present to yourselves as our church within these confines and beyond concerning this disease called anthrax. What is anthrax? How do humans get affected? Why is it a public health security threat? What are the signs and symptoms? What should me and you do about it? And what does it mean for me and you as a Christian? And so to help us discuss this, I have two gentlemen, one on each side, who I'll be happy if they introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Dr. Katawa.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, church. I think you've already introduced me. I am Andrew Katawa, coming from University SDA Church. I am a veterinarian or a vet by profession. And then in addition, I work at the University of Zambia where I teach veterinarians. And coming to today's topic, I have a bit of experience in managing an environmental related situation, including approaches that I think we are having here. It's called One Health. So this is where you bring in experts from different fields to actually handle an outbreak. So that was part of my experience in that area. So I'm happy to be here this afternoon.
Thank you. This is going to be an MPH class today, One Health. Then on my left, there is Dr. Zico, Dr. Lunga Zico. The first time he came here to discuss health issues with us was when we had the COVID pandemic. I don't know if there's anybody who remembers. And he was coming from elsewhere, isn't it? Now he's... So over to you, Doc.
Good afternoon, church. You sound like you have anthrax. Can I get a better response? Good afternoon, church. Okay, that's better. So I am Lunga Mandla Ziko. I am an infectious disease specialist. I work at CIDAS, mostly handling a project that deals with TB. But my professional background prepared me to handle other infectious disease problems, including COVID, like we discussed some time back, and anthrax. I also lecture at Cavendish University, the public health students, and these are some of the topics that I discuss with them. So I hope we can have a fruitful discussion today.
Thank you. Are we agreed that we are fully covered? It's an infection, infectious disease. It comes from animals, vet. It's one health, one health, one health, isn't it? So I think we are covered. To start with, I'll start with you, Dr. Kataba. What is anthrax?
Thank you so much. Now, anthrax is a disease that can move from animals to humans. And mostly this disease is found in the environment, mostly in the soils. So what happens is that it's caused by a germ whose name is, I think maybe there are students here, but it's Bacillus anthracis. So it's anthrax in short. But what happens with that germ is that it remains in the environment for a long time until it finds an animal that picks it up from the environment, and then it germinates. So once it germinates, it then causes problems, and then the animal eventually die. And then it affects cattle, sheep, goats. I think Dr. Ziko will talk about humans as well. So humans are actually affected. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm actually asking these questions to both because they are looking at this anthrax from these different perspectives. So what is anthrax, Doc?
Yes, as Dr. Katava has mentioned, it's caused by a bacteria or a germ which is found mostly in the soil. And like he indicated, it gets to animals mostly through the feeding, as the herbivores, which are the animals he talked about, the ones that feed on grass. As they are feeding, they'll get the germ, and then when we also get to interact with these animals that are infected, we get infected. So it can be through handling of live animals, or it can be animals that are infected. That is how we can get infected. And it's actually not a new disease. Some people may think it's something that's new, but it's been there from time immemorial. It's been documented in ancient Greek, Roman literature, including there are some postulations where people are actually saying that the fifth plague in Genesis could have been anthrax. So it's something that is quite old and has been documented in very, very old literature, tends to affect both animals and humans.
Thank you. Now, of late, we are seated here discussing this condition because of late, it's been making the rounds in the news. We've seen the Minister of Health talk about it. We've seen it in the social media. We've seen pictures of animals dying. Do we have an outbreak?
Yes, I would say we do have an outbreak. We've seen a rapid rise in the numbers. Just about a week ago, we had just about 300 cases reported in humans, and now we have over 500 cases reported, and they seem to be spreading across the country, involving many districts. Just last week, there was a case that was reported in Kasempa. I was actually in Northwestern Province, and Kasempa is very far, but this person was reported to have actually gotten it from Southern Province. And you see how mobile the populations are. It doesn't mean that if you are just found in Lusaka and you're not ingesting meat or you are not found in the hotspot places, then you are protected. The mere fact that we live in a very mobile community means that some of these infectious diseases will move from one area to another in a very, very quick manner.
Bringing a new twist to an old disease.
Yes.
Yeah, no. To you, Dr. Kataba.
Yes.
I would like to find out how, okay, before maybe I find out about the house, which animals are we talking about in particular?
Thank you so much. Now, as Dr. Zico indicated, anthrax has been with us for some time now, but what has been happening is that it has been restricted in the wildlife, in the animals in the world. And in particular, like in Zambia, I think in 1991, there was one of the cases that was reported, outbreak that was reported in Eastern Province, and that was associated with hippos. Now, like Dr. Zico indicated, these are animals that graze. And what the hippo do is that when they are picking their grass, they pull the roots out together with the soil. And so when they ingested that, eventually they got sick, and then that was led to them dying. So what happens when an animal dies, then it, for example, outside in the world there in the national park, it rots, and the germ from the germ of anthrax, it becomes it changes into what we call a spore. Now a spore would imagine like a seed, a maize seed. So it would be like a seed form, and it remains there for years. So what would happen is that it would be in the environment, but animals that do grazing or animals that look for water, for example, where I come from, during this time around, you have to go to take animals to very far places, okay, to drink their water. So in such interfaces where they actually go to places where wild animals have died due to the anthrax, they may actually pick it up as they graze. So eventually, cattle began to pick it up. So when cattle picks it up as they graze, they pick that bacteria into their system, then it germinates, and then it causes the disease. So mostly you're talking about cattle, which is highly, mostly affected, cattle and sheep, and of course a bit of goats. But they are saying goats are not so much affected. I think, as you know, they like feeding from the trees and all small shrubs. But mostly we're talking about cattle, sheep. But overall, it actually affects all animals, depending on how they are exposed, either through breathing in of the spores, but mostly we are talking about animals that graze. Yeah.
Ulula. Someone actually asked me to say, go and ask about chicken.
Yeah, so the chicken, again, it could be a problem, but the literature indicates that it's not usually, affected, and there are reasons for that. One of the reasons is the way the system is built. Number one, it's digestive system, but then the second one is the temperature. So usually for anthrax, does well in animals that have a body temperature below 40 degrees. But for the chicken, you have temperature of 41.5, sometimes to 42.5. So it's slightly above the temperatures where it can actually thrive. So even if a chicken was to ingest a germ of anthrax, that germ would not reproduce well to cause disease. But it can be, like I said, it can be a source of exposure to us, because we can breathe in the spores from the anthrax. For example, people that keep chickens, we know that chicken they normally like to play on the ground in the soils, and then the soil actually gets into their feathers. So you can actually, interaction with the chicken, the spores that are sitting on the feathers can actually get to you, and you can actually get a disease. I think Dr. Zico can amplify more on that one. Yeah.
Would you like to say something on that?
All right, yes. The chicken, like he mentioned, does not have a temperature or a conducive environment for the anthrax to thrive, but because of its interaction with the source of the anthrax, you will then get you can be exposed to spores that are found on the body and not in the meat of the anthrax. And maybe just to add as to why we probably are having an outbreak at this time, Over the years from 1991, we've had anthrax cases reported in the country, and we are seeing a gradual trend, an increase in the number of cases. And this is probably attributed to the fact that people who have game, or rather who rear cattle, are expanding their livestock. And with that comes with need for more grazing land. And as we need more grazing land, there is that interaction between the domesticated animals and the wild animals. Like you mentioned, the hippos are notorious for this, and they are known notoriously for harboring anthrax. And so as our cattle move into the wild, there is more exposure to the anthrax. But we also have this global warming, the climate change that's taking place, where our grazing land is diminishing, drying out quickly, and then we need to go to the valleys. And in our country, when we look at the areas where this anthrax is actually coming from, it's from the lower Zambezi, in the Zambezi Valley, Luangwa Valley, and so on. And that just goes to show that the animals, the hippos which are there, for instance, have this anthrax, but we are also moving into their territory and getting this anthrax and bringing it now into our homes, into our villages, and so on. That's why we are seeing this increase in the number of cases.
So we are disturbing the habitat of the hippos and
Exactly.
yet bringing disease to our
Yes.
communities. That is what do we call a human being? That is what humans are capable of doing, isn't it? I don't know about you in the audience, but you heard them say spores, and he likened the spores to seeds. And you know that seeds are everywhere, and if we have them in that environment, it means that there have to be other ways to prevent it besides eradicating the spores. Because if it's in the soil, that is when we use terms like ubiquitous, isn't it?
Yes.
It needs us now to sit up and say, what else can we do to eliminate this disease? I think we'll come to it when the time comes. But again, I just want to ask you, Doc, concerning now the interaction between the animal and the human. How does the human now get to become affected?
Thank you so much. So the human gets to be affected in maybe a number of ways, and one of them is how we handle the animal that is infected. Some people would actually, if they find a dead animal, or maybe you don't allow them to die, but when you find a sick animal at a farm, there are people that will tell their boys, workers, and say, guys, it's like that animal is not well, can you slaughter it? So I think it's not encouraged to slaughter animals that are sick without authority from maybe a vet or one qualified person within the area. So slaughtering animals that are infected, handling their tissues like blood, we can actually get contact. And then eating the actual meat. There is a story where, we know that the best way to dispose of, the animals that die from anthrax is actually to bury them. So a gentleman dug a trench and buried the animals. Then his boys went back at night and dug up to actually eat, to open the carcass and actually try and eat. So they were actually getting the disease to their homes, by either where you unlawfully go around to actually get hold of carcasses that have been condemned because of anthrax, contamination. That would be another one. And also those that work in places where they make shoes. Okay, for example, hides or skins. As we said, this anthrax is able to withstand.
Before we go on to the shoes, I want us to kokola on the meat. Because Zambians like meat. We need to know what we are eating, isn't it? So it's those people who are at the farm, interacting with meat, with animals, and then the animal gets sick.
Yes.
And they slaughter the animal that is sick, not yet dead, and then they'll say, we killed it, so we shall eat it. He's saying it's not right. But there's also those that one will be the worst, where the animal actually dies. Them, they will say, will not eat it, but they said it. Have you seen meats in the markets? Is that right to have meats in the markets? Are those designated areas for meat to be sold? Would we know where that meat is coming from?
Yes, so one of my colleagues was just telling me that whilst we have this outbreak, I think they impounded some trucks very early in the morning with meat coming from somewhere. So there are these illegal, cheap meats that we buy. I know that there's a market that is active whilst we are sleeping from 03 to 05 somewhere. We should be very careful. Of course, we want to save money, but we should be very sure where we get our beef from. As I said, a very proper and a normal butcher won't sell meat that is coming from a sick animal. Why? Because even the farmer who supplies them, they have an integrity arrangement where you sign and say, you not give us bad meat, so you can't slaughter animals that are sick. So if we know where we buy the meat from, I think it's important. So let's know the sources of where we can actually buy the meat. I think that's very important. But I think probably we'll tackle it later. As Adventists, we have these other options that even when we have this outbreak, we can then see what we can test around. But as you've said, the first thing is let's buy meat from designated places, not only na nyama ya 50 kwacha or per kg or something like that I'm selling. Please, let's avoid such.
Deliveries?
Yes, just to do a WhatsApp, I'll bring.
So it has to be a designated place?
Absolutely.
With all the certifications on the
Yes,
wall?
yes.
And in a clean environment. Covered. Meat shouldn't be sold in open places, isn't it?
Not open places, yes, but in places that are clean. And I think Dr. Kombwa, when he was introducing, he said the council closed up some butcheries.
Yes.
So there are places where people just open up and start selling.
And yeah.
Yeah, so we should avoid such places, especially during this time when we have an outbreak.
Thank you. Now that we have an idea of some of the ways in which human beings will get... No, actually, you haven't told us one more. The drummers and the tanners of leather. Did you want to say something on that one? I cut you short.
Yes, I was just saying that because this gem for anthrax is able to resist, the heat and many other things that we would think they can actually destroy the gems. I know that some people preserve their meat by adding salt. Others just put it on the sun to dry. You cannot kill anthrax by using that. You can salt it, you can dry it. It will be dry, but the anthrax will actually be, like I said, it will be a seed. Yeah. So if you put seed outside in the sun, they actually feel good. So that's the same with the anthrax. And so what would happen is that if you get skins now, you take them to make shoes. So the people that normally prepare the skins to make the shoes, as they do that, the spores can actually get into their nose. They can breathe in the spores and then get infected. And also people that do the drums, you can actually inherit a drum, the ngoma, from your great-grandfather. It will still have anthrax because anthrax can stay for years, decades and decades on the skin. So that could be one of the issues. So only clean animals should be used for shoe making as well as the drums. Yeah.
As well as the drums. Thank you for that. So it's not only in the eating, but also in the handling of whatever is of an animal. Now, let's turn to the physician and ask, this human being has now gotten the anthrax, isn't it? In one way or another. How does it manifest? What are the ways in which a person who gets infected or who ingests or whatever, how does it manifest? How will we know that this is anthrax?
Okay, so the ways anthrax presents in a human being is dependent on the route through which
Many vets here, you know, that they just go to a shop, give me that one for my chicken, give me that medicine for my chicken. Yeah, because the animal have fever, they have this, they are not eating, you are just pumping in the drugs. So actually what you are doing is you are prolonging the anthrax to be shed in your farm longer. So if you have
Before you
any
know it,
sick
they are
animals,
done.
please call for a vet or an assistant vet, VA. They will come through and they assess your animals and then recommend treatment. I'm usually a bit sad when I think about antimicrobial resistance because the next war is actually antimicrobial resistance. I don't know if you have had an experience, but I know of a person who when they go to the hospital, they don't get well. They are sick, they give them medicines there, they don't recover because they have acquired antimicrobial resistance. So in other words, all the drugs they take, they are not working. So like he said, you know, sometimes when someone makes a point, it gets home very clear. If you are the person who's, maybe you have a family member who's, because of, you know, their resistance to these drugs, just one person, they fail to recover even from a condition which they could have actually recovered due to our abuse as family or even as a people. I think it's something that we can actually avoid. So let's avoid being our own vets, being our own doctors. I think let's ask the correct people to help us manage our animals and also manage our ailments. Thank you.
Maybe
Even
I
though
can
you're
also,
a doctor,
since he's a one health specialist, maybe could you also just elaborate on the effect of resistance in animals transmitting to humans?
Yes, so thank you so much. So I think a simple example I would give is chicken, those that keep chickens. Because we want the chickens to grow fast and to be big, we'll be adding a bit of antibiotics in their feed. So what would happen is that the people that are buying the chickens, because we don't even know when we should stop giving the antibiotics before we sell the chickens, we are in a way giving them antibiotics indirectly. But because we are giving them at levels that are very low, what will happen is that they will develop, the organisms will actually develop resistance against that antibiotic, such that without knowing, you know, they've been buying the chickens and know that they are sick, they go to the hospital, they are given this drug, that drug does not work. Okay, so what we are doing, the danger actually now is that this antimicrobial resistance is more driven by the animal side. Okay, maybe that's why Dr. Zico said I should mention. So the animal side. And the challenge we have is our dear friends, the farmers. Okay, they want to copy what others are doing, adding antibiotics in the feed. As a result, they are creating that resistance. They are treating their animals. They don't know. So you are given a period. For example, at the hospital, they'll tell you, drink this medicine for 3 days or 5 days. When you drink it the first day, the second day you are better. Sometimes even the first day. Because there are some of us, just seeing the doctor, you are okay. You know? Just seeing the doctor, I'm feeling better. You drink once, then you stop. What happens? Because you don't follow through the course, you're actually going to develop resistance. So let's ensure that we get the right person to prescribe the drug. If they tell us, give your animals for 3 or 5 days, let's ensure that we do that, even if the animal is well, until we finish the course. So by so doing, we are preventing that resistance. Thank you.
and then it becomes secondary resistance in the human. So you're already resistant even before you take the drug. So I think we've discussed a lot surrounding treatment. And if you noticed, this latter part was a bit grim, you know, sad. We didn't come here to bring sadness and to make you sad. It says, happy are the feet of those that carry good news, isn't it? So we have good news for you. Do we have?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So Dr. Zico is an elder as well, and I know that he's a man well vested in godly matters. Please tell us what or should I start with you, Doc? Yes. What would Jesus have us do? What are the spiritual aspects that anthrax, this outbreak, can teach us?
Yes, so already the people out there, they are wishing they were Adventist. Because the Adventists, we know the health message, right? Of course, all of us are struggling. There are people that they stop eating meat 1 week, 2 weeks. After I preach a strong health message, then they slip back. But we have clear instruction from both the spirit of prophecy and the Bible. In Leviticus, where we're given what to eat and not to eat, there's also a guideline on what we should do. If you got verse 39, it said that do not touch a carcass of an animal that dies of an unknown cause. So if you see your animal dying without any cause, please don't touch it. And then somewhere it says, when you touch it, the Bible says you'll be unclean until evening. You should ensure that you wash your clothes. So it's talking about the protective clothing. So let's ensure that for those of us that work at farms, your clothes are washed, and you also do some disinfection. That is coming from the Bible, actually. So you disinfect. So it says that person will be unclean until evening. So it provides for natural disinfection. But for us, we have disinfectors now. I think, luckily, we have, due to the, the pandemic, we know that we should carry that hand sanitizer. So in a way, if you are working in the butchery or so, you are buying, yes, meat from correct sources, but you don't know that one stubborn farmer can sneak in, an animal. So make sure that you wash your hands with soap, you disinfect your hands, you just follow through with what should be done as preventive measures, and that is provided from the Word of God. I think Paul was asked by the elders. They said, well, we have a lot of converts that are Gentiles coming in. What commandment should we give them? He says, there are only two. Let them abstain from women and also meat offered to idols. Why? Because we don't know the source of such meats. So I think the Bible provides for us, and we can actually evangelize to others why we don't eat meat that we don't know where it came from. So this is the opportunity for us to share with others. And also, what would Jesus do? He would actually help our neighbors. We will help them by giving them the correct information. We also help them by being their own brother's keeper. Okay? If you have animals that are sick, please kindly report. I know that you'll be scared because they will say, well, you will not sell your animals and all that, but you are helping the nation at large. So let's be faithful stewards by ensuring that we are obedient as we are as Adventists. And sometimes we forget.
Yes.
But I think we are called to be faithful. This is the time that we should be faithful. Thank you.
Thank you. When you were talking about the verse in Leviticus, I'm just thinking the Bible is a book that is timeless. Imagine the times those things were written, and only now we are saying in the microscope you can see this hand washing, this is how you wash hands. We are learning that now. And the Bible taught that thousands and thousands of years ago. So let's go back to that book. Doc, does God have a solution for us?
Yes, God has a solution for every problem. And I would want to state that even as we are bombarded left, right, and center with most of these disasters, we should practice Christianity that is relevant to society. We can get an example from the life that Christ led. When he was on earth, he attended to the sick, he attended to the hungry. So he attended to physical needs while also addressing their spiritual needs. And in this case, we have a lot of disasters, a lot of pestilences. I would want to read from the Great Controversy, page 423, under the chapter, The Impending Conflict. And here, what we are seeing is that the spirit of prophecy reads, while appearing to the children of men as a great physician who can heal all maladies, he will bring disease and disaster upon populous cities until populous cities are reduced to ruin and desolation. Even now he is at work in accidents, terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes, in every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. He sweeps away the ripening harvest, and famine and distress follow. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by the pestilence. This is something that we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. I'll end there. What I'm just trying to say here is, as we were just feeling good that the COVID pandemic has finished, and then something else comes up. Even while we're dealing with the COVID pandemic, there was monkeypox.
Yes.
While we're dealing with the COVID pandemic in other places, there were other diseases that were hitting people. So these things will keep on coming, and they are a sign that we are in the last days. And for me, that should actually be good news, because no one wants to continue on this earth. The more we get closer to the end, the better for each God-loving Christian, because we know that soon we shall leave this earth, because we are just pilgrims on this earth. And then lastly, when we read from Matthew 24, again, is basically talking about the happenings in the last days. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. Pestilences are diseases. These diseases that we keep seeing coming one after another. But when we go to verse 14, the Bible says, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." This quarter we're talking about mission. And even as we are talking about mission, we cannot talk about mission without talking about the physical needs of the people. We cannot talk about mission without talking about the health of the people. So we need to be relevant. But the most important thing is that even as we are doing this last day mission, as we are educating the people about the gospel and God's plan for our lives, what we are to eat and what we are not to eat, eventually, once we do that, it is as a witness so that the end can come. Without us preaching the gospel, the end will not come. And all of us are actually waiting for the end. So I pray that even as we continue having these discussions, preaching the gospel, we also put our houses in order and prepare for God's soon coming as we spread the word around.
Thank you for that. Now, what I'm going to ask you, ideally should have been discussed much earlier when we were talking about prevention. But I've put it here because I want all of us to think about reducing meat in our diets or stopping it altogether, even from a spiritual perspective. I know that we shouldn't be scared to the point of stopping meat with anthrax, but let it be a motivation and an opportunity for us to rethink what we really should be believing in. Are you able to tell us, even in brief, what other protein sources would be helpful besides meat?
All right. So someone once says that science and the Bible are not in conflict. So even from the science perspective, God's original plan for man is confirmed. That human beings that subsist on plant-based foods live much healthier lives than those that subsist on animal protein. And this has been confirmed in many scientific studies. And even when we look at nature, you compare the lifespan of the herbivores, the lions, or the elephants, the buffaloes, and compare to the carnivores, the animals that eat meat, you will see that a lion generally will live maybe just about 10 to 15 years max, but these other animals will live much longer, the animals that live on the plant sources. It is the same with humans. Studies have shown that humans that are vegans, vegetarians, or have less animal in their diet will live much longer. So the advantage, or let me start with the disadvantage of animal sources. When you eat a lot of meat, the chances of you developing what are called cardiovascular diseases. So cardiovascular diseases are diseases that affect the heart, that affect your blood vessels, and these include diseases like hypertension, and the consequences such as you having a heart attack, the strokes. Those are more common among people who eat meat compared to those that do not. You have diseases like cancers of the large intestine, or let me just say any cancer. Cancers are much more common among people that eat meat than those that do not eat meat. Diseases like diabetes are more common among the meat eaters than the vegetarians. So there are many, many reasons that we can use to actually explain the importance of a plant-based diet, even from the scientific point. But when we get back to Genesis, when God created man, number one, even vegetables were not part of the diet. It was seed and nuts, okay? Grain. That is what God had planned for man to eat. And there are some concerns that when you just eat a vegetarian diet, you will lack certain nutrients. And it is true. There are certain nutrients, such as vitamin B12, which is a very essential vitamin for human beings. Very common among plant sources, dairy products, meat, eggs, and so on. But you can still get enough of them from the plant sources, from the same diet that God prescribed in the book of Genesis, from seed, grain, nuts. You can have enough of them. However, you can also have a good amount of them even from dark green vegetables. So the principle is that even as you shift or maintain a vegetarian diet, you should not just eat the same things over and over. It has to be a variety. A variety will ensure that you have adequate nutrients. We don't want to be saying we are vegetarians and then you'll go into the streets and you look frail. That will be sending the wrong message. But even as Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys looked much healthier than the others, even us, we should do the same. Eat a healthy vegetarian diet. There is also an unhealthy vegetarian diet. Eat a healthy vegetarian diet that will distinguish your countenance even from the people that eat meat. Even as you are going to talk about vegetarianism, people are going to be motivated by just how you are looking, how smooth your skin looks, not like mine with some pimples.
So we are encouraged. I hope we are encouraged with those final words. The truth of the matter is that in this country, we are blessed with a lot of foods, plant-based foods that we can use. And if you would like to go that direction, pray about it, okay? Look study, look, research and find out what you can use. There's a lot now available even on YouTube. The recipes, doesn't have to be boring all the time, the same thing. But really, as we draw closer and closer to the end, we will have the need to stop. So it's better we stop now and preserve our health ahead of time. So this is just an encouragement at the end that we wanted to bring to you. I just want to read to you 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8. And it says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not abandoned. We are struck down, but not destroyed." And really the reason is It's because we always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. Really, it's because of the person we have believed in. When these problems come, we'll surmount them because of the God that we have believed in. Now, before we end, I would like to do this exercise so that we are all living at on the same page. Are there any questions and discussions, comments? Would you like to enrich this discussion with more information, maybe a quotation? Or would you like to ask a question? Doc, we need help. Or maybe what would be good is if, please come forward, come through, so that we make it snappy. We have less than 20 minutes to go. Yes, please come through to the front.
She says, come through. So come through.
So I actually have two questions. The first one is about, you talked of chickens having a harsh environment for anthrax, but you said so I say that I actually have two questions. The presenters initially said chickens have harsh environment for this bacteria, or rather the germ anthrax. But then they can always get the spores from the interaction they have with other domesticated animals. So now, since you said also the highly affected animals are hippos, and the hippos happen to be part of aqualife. They are found in the river and they interact with fish. That's why we find fish, right? So how safe are fish handlers? Or rather, how safe are fish eaters? So that's my first question. Then the other question is, probably the reason why other people decide to just go and get drugs to treat their animals, more especially when they suspect maybe, probably maybe one of their animals seems to be sick or anything. Probably they are afraid. Maybe reporting this case, in a case where you happen to suspect one of animals to be sick, does it attract any charge? Or do you need to pay anything to the vet people? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
I thought there was a, yes, please come through. Yes.
Good afternoon. Okay, so my question is, I didn't hear you talk about the complication. This side? Okay, all right. I would just like to know the complication that anthrax has on a pregnant woman and the effect that it may cause to the unborn child. And then the other aspect is, how safe is the anthrax vaccine, especially to immune-compromised individuals who are at high risk, especially the ones that you mentioned, handling cattle, working in farms, agricultures. And then how good is the recovery on young children? Is there effect on their development? Thank you.
Afternoon congregation. My question is on I've heard on boiling boiling meat. So I don't know what type of meat should be boiled. So on that, I'm lost. I'm lost. Yeah, I came late, sorry. I came late. Yeah, so on that one, you forgive me. Then the second one, can the meat not be, shocky or so? Yeah.
I think we can take care of this first set of questions. Dr. Kataba, the ones about Aqualife and drugs.
Thank you so much. I wanted to follow the question on chickens, but I don't know if it was, I missed the question, but probably it was a commentary. The chickens, yes, they cannot get anthrax. Maybe it's a good news. But now, how about a fish?
Yes.
Having said that hippos are the ones that, especially in the world that can carry the anthrax. So mostly it's warm-blooded animals. Warm-blooded animals. So the fish already is out. Yeah, so the fish is out. Yeah, the fish is out. So, however, we can just mention that there is some fish that also the Bible discourages us from eating. It likes going into the soil. So I think that one we should not try. So the fish, I think it's okay. Then there was the issue of one who has sick animals, and they are scared of reporting, or are they going to attract a charge for the treatment of the animals? So, as I said, for notifiable diseases like this one, the government is highly interested in to ensure that they contain the situation. So right now, I think they are providing services at a very reduced fee or almost nearly free of charge to ensure that they contain this disease very aggressively. Of course, working with other partners that are supporting the ministry and our government. So if you have sick animals, you can actually call for people to have a look at them. People that are qualified, they check your animals. I think it's a good way and it's a good practice. Yeah, so there may be a cost, yes, but I think when you look at human health and treating the animals or the health of an animal and the cost, I think having your animals treated can never be a costly venture. So I think it's something that we should do. But we just need to emphasize that if you hide the disease, then you'll be an accomplice. So remember, this is like war. So the government is trying to ensure that the economy is running. Now beef have been halted from some regions, it's not moving. So if you hide it, you may end up facing the wrath of the law. And I think that you don't want to do. Yeah, thank you.
The truth of the matter is, if you get the disease and you transmit it, the cost will be much higher than that cost of treating one or two animals. Anthrax in a pregnant woman.
Okay, so I want to state that from literature, there is no report of anthrax, number one, being transmitted from a mother to an unborn child. In the womb, there is no recorded literature where there is transmission. You know, like for certain diseases like HIV, a woman who is infected can transmit the virus to an unborn child. But for anthrax, that is not documented, and it is very highly unlikely. However, the question was also on complications of this woman. Now, remember that a child's health is dependent on the mother's health. So if the mother is healthy, the child will also be okay. The child is highly dependent on the mother. So if the mother develops very severe disease, which leads to spread in the bloodstream and can go and affect the brain, let me just simply say the mother is severely ill, it can lead to what is called fetal death, where the baby dies before he or she is even born, number one, or it can lead to growth retardation. If the mother is very unwell, the child will probably not receive enough blood, enough nutrients, and that can affect the growth of the child. But most importantly, that anthrax can lead to death of the mother and consequently death of the child. So those are some of the complications that you may have among pregnant women from anthrax. The other question was, is the vaccine okay among people who have very low immune systems? So I want to give a disclaimer that as far as I know, there is no problem. However, as we have this disease, we are going to provide more awareness even through a bulletin. So if there's any information that we come across that is probably contrary to what I know, we will give that in more like a write-up for us to just read about and get educated about it. Boiled meat, which meat should be boiled?
Maybe before you go to that, Doc, on children and vaccines, he told us very well which people should receive this vaccine, isn't it? It was limited to those who are exposed and those who are in high risk occupational risk. So I was thinking that there will be very little indication for a child to actually receive this vaccine. Or the disease on the child. Oh, okay.
Okay, I think I didn't get that question. So just to clarify, are you asking how a child would respond would be affected by anthrax? Okay, very good. So just like any other disease, it depends on how early the disease is diagnosed and how soon treatment is started. But a general principle that I think my fellow doctor who handles children, me, I just handle my 3 kids. How she handles other people's children. A principle, one thing that I noted even when in my early career days, that children respond very well to a lot of treatment, way better than adults. Even in the COVID, we saw that. Children respond very well. Today we're discussing with my wife and asking why. Then I tried to give some reasons, but in the end I just said it's just God's grace, because these are innocent children. That does not mean we should neglect them and just say God will take care of them. But the thing is also with them, it depends on the site of the anthrax. So if it's inhalational, it is GI, it is affecting your digestive system, the effect is almost similar to the adults. If it's affecting the skin and you handle it very quickly, it will heal very quickly, just like as though you're handling a chipotle. So the skin, in summary, responds very well to treatment as long as you identify it early, but it's the others that we have concerns about. The digestive system, which can even spread to the brain, affecting the lungs, can also spread to the brain. And mortality is very high.
I was going to talk about the brain, if that's okay. The difference between our brain as adults and children's brain is that it's growing, not only in size. So usually you see that pediatricians will do the head circumference of a child, whichever child had an insult to their brain in one way or another. Now, one effect of meningitis, if that anthrax goes to the meninges and causes havoc there, one long-term effect on meningitis would be they can be affected in their cognition, meaning the way they they'll learn, okay? It may take long for them to understand certain things. It may affect in the brain controls many things. It controls the eyes, it controls the ears. So meningitis can also cause deafness, blindness, and the like. But again, I want to emphasize that becomes now a secondary effect of that infection not being taken care of for a long time until it reaches places that are delicate, like such as the brain. But all in all, if detected early, like he said, all things will be fine. And medications are there to handle that. Boiling meat and braising, I don't know who would want to tackle that.
Yes, so the boiling meat, I think we all, those that eat meat, usually it's boiled, either boiled or smoked or where you braise. So I think the braising is where the higher risk of contracting this germ is. Because I don't know, I was in a certain place and they decided to treat me nicely. So they said, come. They took me to a nice place where they do the braai. And they asked me, how do you want it done? And they were eating. I could see that their meat was actually dripping blood. So I told them, but no, for me, I should be, if it's like this, I'll not take it. Yeah. So you don't want to take meat that you can actually see dripping blood. If you take that one, you're actually taking the germ. And what would happen is what Dr. Zico was saying. The digestive system, it will go and localize in the system and then cause those problems. And therefore, I think during this period, maybe we can reduce on the braise. We can do chicken, but not other like beef. Yeah, so that is not encouraged. If you have to destroy that germ, you need to boil, like he said, at least 95, 100 degrees boiling for 30 minutes at least. Everywhere the meat should be covered, not just on top, the others, maybe on the bottom, the other surface is not cooked. That would be a challenge. So it should be boiled like my grandmother would do it. Boil the chicken the whole day. When she's eating without her teeth, she's just swallowing. That is perfect. Yeah, that is perfect.
Wow.
Thank you.
I'll seek your indulgence. We have 5 minutes to 5. Should we get more questions? Just a few. Okay, come through.
Good afternoon. How safe is it to take milk, sour, or cheese? Milk, sour, or cheese. How safe is it?
She actually has gotten one of my questions. So they have reduced to 4. But I'll summarize. So the first one is on anthrax and eating sore. We know that children, as well as our pregnant mothers, have the habit of the desire to feast on sore. So how safe is that? Can it also be taken through that means? If that's the case, how best are we going to ensure that our children are not indulging in sore as a source of appetite? And then the other one is anthrax and the casting loads. Casting loads. Sorry, I'm referring to the issue of when Jesus was crucified. His garments, these soldiers did cast loads on the garment and shared the garments. Now, in an event where someone dies from anthrax and they have left clothing, of course we know clothing can have some spores of anthrax. How much information are we giving, and is it advisable to have those clothes shared among the living or surviving Tonga brothers, or rather they can be also burnt off? The last one is on how much are we considering vaccinating our brothers, especially in Namwala and Kwahae, those young boys who are heading cattle, because we know they are at high risk of also anthrax, apart from the military and these other people you mentioned. But I didn't hear you mentioning about the young boys, Kwavulos, who also do a lot of cattle heading in the plains where anthrax is very much endemic. In conclusion, drinking water from the river or ponds, again, it still comes back to people who are living in areas like Namwala, areas like even Ulozi, areas like Afioya, where they draw their water from the river for drinking. And also even from wells, where these wells, if not well monitored, the same way where people are drawing water from, even sometimes animals will come and drink from there. Because the well is right near the stream, and the farmers or the villagers live up on the forest as a village. So when animals are coming to drink water from the river, they sometimes even go and drink in the ponds. I mean the wells where people are also drinking. So how safe are the wells, and how best can we ensure these wells also are protected from animals drinking from them?
So how do we know that a baby is sick with anthrax? That's the question that she's asking. And she's asking so because he has a small child. I want to believe.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Ziko, milk, sour, cheese.
Okay, so there is a potential of infection or contamination of even the dairy products. So maybe let me combine this question with the potentially contaminated wells. It is possible you can have some spores even in contaminated wells. But the issue here is starting from the dairy products, we are all advised to, number one, consume products that are pasteurized. So once they are pasteurized, there are many other diseases even from dairy products that we can get, even from cattle, that we can, some of them similar to TB, and many, many other diseases we can get from cattle. But just by pasteurizing that dairy product, you are getting rid of any of those diseases. So if you get from reputable companies, I will not want to advertise for these companies, but I will just say reputable companies, you are safe from some of these diseases. That's for dairy products. When it comes to the wells, again, there's potential for infection. We are advised as much as possible that to prevent a lot of these waterborne diseases, cholera, dysentery, bilharzia, and now potentially anthrax, we should do what? Boil our water and also use what? Chlorine. So if we do that, we will not have any issues to worry about. The soil, like Dr. Katawa mentioned, anthrax is ideally found in the soil as the seed form or as the spores. So if you are eating soil, very common among pregnant women, you are eating soil and that soil has the spores. The spores can enter your body and then germinate from there and do whatever they are good at doing in your body. So those are my responses to those questions. Anthrax and casting of lots, the question eventually led to whether clothes from a deceased are okay or not. Even when you are handling a patient who has anthrax in a hospital setting or a home setting, treat the clothes as potentially contaminated. Those clothes that are being used by that person while they are sick are potentially contaminated. They are obviously, when someone dies, they are obviously clothes that they had packed that you can share, but those that they were wearing, my advice would, if you are able to decontaminate them, go ahead and do it. But the safest thing to do is just to get rid of them. I think, Dr. Katava, you can add to my responses and also the other two questions.
There was,
Or
a,
maybe
there was a question on
a baby with anthrax. Let me handle that.
What was it about the baby? The effects?
The symptoms. How can you know that a baby has anthrax?
Oh, okay.
Or would you?
I'm not. Anyway, I've never seen a baby with anthrax. But for me, what would make me suspect that this baby has anthrax is that black Eshka. Remember that black thing he talked about? The scar that is very typical of anthrax infection in the skin. That would make us suspect anthrax. Babies have diarrhea and vomiting all the time, okay? So it's a common thing to have diarrhea and vomiting with babies, and most of the causes are self-limiting, meaning it will go away. You just have to keep the baby hydrated and give them the salts that they are losing. But if they are vomiting blood, they have fluids coming out of their other orifices or openings that are looking like blood, serous like blood, that would be a very important signal for me, especially in this time when there's an epidemic like this, an outbreak. You put these things as, you give them a very low index of suspicion and want to investigate them as soon as possible. So even that diarrhea, we'll take it to the labs to make sure that we are not dealing with anthrax. I think that is what would be important. You don't want to miss things that you would think it's just every day, and yet you could have taken care of it. Remember, we said that once a certain threshold has been passed, once they are really, really sick, one of the reasons why they are really, really sick is when they come very late to the hospital, or we are treating the wrong thing by self-medicating, or the doctors maybe not investigating enough. Then you have this late presentation. It's very difficult. The outcome is usually poor. So you want to make sure that you don't reach that stage. Yeah.
Just to add, you also need to think of where would the child have gotten the anthrax from. So if, for instance, there are other people in the home who have anthrax and then the child presents with some of those symptoms, you should think about it in that manner. Yeah. If you have a child with diarrhea in Sinazongwe, think about anthrax. Exactly. You have a child in PHI with diarrhea, and that child is the only one in the home with diarrhea, highly unlikely it is anthrax. If you have everyone in the house with diarrhea after having eaten meat, most likely the source is one, and if the child also consumed that meat, then you can think about it in those lines. So the symptoms are not unique to anthrax. They can be found with other diseases. Think about where would the child have gotten the anthrax from as well as part of your suspicion.
In fact, household contact is a very important historical item. If in the history, I'll give an example of TB. TB in children is a very difficult disease to recognize. But one of the things that is very important in its recognition is there anyone in the family who has TB? That's a very important question. So in children, it will come in all sorts of forms. But when it comes, if there's someone in the family with TB, then we are full throttle on investigation because it doesn't always appear to be what it seems. Dog on herders and maybe even eating soil? No, whales.
Yes, I think the questions have been ably handled by Dr. Zico. I maybe just speak to the milk and the cheese. I think we all know the normal color of milk. Yeah, so with anthrax, it actually changes the color because like we heard, the blood, sometimes when you're milking, the color will change, maybe reddish or yellowish. So obviously, just from the look, we can actually tell. And, but of course, if we are buying from the wrong sources, that again will be a challenge. So provided we are getting from the correct sources, and we can tell from the color, I think we are safe. Yeah, so anything that looks different or maybe strange from what we know to be normal, let's be suspicious. But otherwise, we should be safe, provided we are buying from the right sources. Yeah.
Thank you. But I think the one on cattle headers.
Yes, so the cattle headers, the only risk that they would have is the cutaneous one, the skin. If the animals have that and then they in a way interact, then they have that problem. The vaccination, I don't think it's something that we should really worry about, provided they are informed on what they should do. They don't have that much unnecessary or ignorant kind of contact where you don't know, you are just all over. I think we shouldn't worry. So, like we heard, even in the US, that vaccine is only restricted to people that work in the butchery, the veterinarians, and the military for the purposes that we know, in terms of some attack or something like that, yes. But not everyone in the population. Also, the idea is that we don't want to expose, for example, there was a question about children, pregnant women. You don't want to expose those people. Because in the military, I think in Zambia, there was an advert where they said if you're pregnant, you can't go. It is because of such things. Or maybe give you a vaccine that if you're expecting, it will actually affect the child. So in this case, we don't want to expose people that are immune compromised, because that vaccine, like Dr. Zico said, it is inactivated. So it is inactivated in a way, but it can elicit some kind of disease. So if you are already immune compromised, you can actually succumb to that vaccine.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want to give to anyone, only those that are in the line of defense.
The way I understand you is that in this instance of cattle headers, prevention is better than vaccine.
Yes, that's the best.
Okay. Brothers and sisters, we have come to the end of this discussion today, but we agreed here with my elder that he needs to conclude it in a certain way. We touched on it, but as we had a chat, the four of us, we agreed that he should say something. So, Elder Kombwa, over to you.
Good afternoon, church. Knowledge is, there is a quotation that I had just opened from Christian Temperance and Bible Hygiene, which says, those who, having had the light upon the subject of eating, dressing with simplicity, in obedience to moral and physical laws, but still shun duty in these things, have neglected also to follow the cross. There is another quotation in Testimonies to the Church, which says, meat stimulates. It has injured the stomach and perverted the taste. The sensitive nerves of the brain have been benumbed. The animal appetite strengthened at the expense of the moral and intellectual faculties. Now, these are statements that were made over 159 years ago, over a century ago, as regards counsels on health. If there is a church that is rich with the health message, none beats the Adventist church. We can boast of many books that have been written not only as counsel, but to date have actually been proven as number one basis as regards the foundation of true principles of health. This past week, I came across an article that was generated by Loma Linda, which is an article titled Therapeutic Diet Introduced as the First of Its Kind in the US. The colleagues have been belaboring to explain, how the back to Eden thing can actually help us work Here we are now trying to institute dietary measures as part of treatment. This is an interesting article, especially we as a church who believe that the health message is the right hand of the gospel. Personally, it shouldn't take anthrax or fear of anthrax for us to start believing in what we have been taught. Even as I admonish myself, even as I encourage each one of us, I think it is high time, if really we are a people that are to proclaim this message that we should proclaim. This health message is one that is paramount for us all. Pastor Manjimela wanted also to give a conclusion. So this was half of the conclusion. Pastor, come and now summarize, make us stand, pray for us, and then we will give the announcement. You are welcome, Pastor.
Good afternoon, church. I think he's just starting me. I didn't have... the reason I moved all the way from there to come here, I wanted to ask a question on fish. But when I came here, I think my sister covered it. That's how I was humbled and I kept quiet. But I think that, for me, when a gospel comes in form of anthrax, it's good for the church. It's good for the church because it's a wake-up call. And I think most of the things that my colleagues here in the front are trying to explain and challenge all of us, they are not new things. Except I've discovered that, Dr. Komba, in our church, I think we react quickly when there is a threat on life. But when it comes from the pulpit, it takes time to assimilate. But when the gospel comes in form of death, then we react quickly. But I want to say to each one of us that God spoke to Moses in Exodus chapter 15 and verse 26, if you diligently hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God and obey his statutes, he will not bring any of these diseases that he brought upon the Egyptians. I think we have enough arsenals as a church and as believers in order for us to stay healthy. And I pray that with this presentation, we'll be challenged, not so because there is anthrax and we may die, but more so because it's a confirmation between what God spoke many years ago to what our natural scientists are able to confirm as having been said by God. So I pray that what we've shared today and learn to go a long way to help us. Hallelujah. I don't know whether you said we pray. Okay, we may stand. Our God and our Father in heaven, what a wake-up call to each one of us on the need to pay attention to the health message. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for our colleagues that have ably taken time to share insights of this deadly disease that has come into our country. This is not the first of its kind. When HIV came, your commandments, Lord, were already there. When COVID came, your commandments were already there. Even with the onset of anthrax, your commandments are already set clear in your word. Except a lot of us are slow to respond. And some of us have opted not to obey your word. And very soon, some of us, Heavenly Father, we will have to eat certain foods as medicine and not food. So help us while it is day to hearken to your voice and live healthful lives. Bless our colleagues in front who were presenting and the church. And those of us that have been following online, that together, Lord, may we all make definite decisions to depart from that which kills and embrace that which gives life. This is our asking in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Church, what do we say for our discussants? For what they've done, I think we can do a little bit better. Or we have been infected by anthrax through the inhalation. What do we say for our discussants? Amen, indeed. Colleagues, Dr. Andrew, Dr. Nchimba, and Dr. Zico, allow me to thank you on behalf of Chainama Seventh, the Adventist Church, even on behalf of the Health Council. This knowledge that you have imparted to us today will go a long way in making us a better Christian community that is prepared for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, we are so grateful. Just to reiterate on the announcements, starting this evening, the elder on duty is Elder Chiza Kumwenda. And let's remember the bereaved families. I would ask now the chorister to disperse us even as we go out. May God bless us. Amen.
Chief of sinners though I be, Jesus shed his blood for me, died that I might live on high, died that I might never die. As the branches to the vine, I am his and he is mine. Chief of sinners though I be, Christ is all